If someone had told me that scrubbing the marble floors of the Crawford mansion would lead me to owning them one day, I'd have laughed until the mop slipped from my hands. But that was before I learned that life isn't fair. It's a test. Back then, I was just Lila Grant, the girl people barely noticed. I worked 2 shifts at a diner and cleaned houses at night to pay for my mom's hospital bills. My world smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. Yet every morning when I walked through the Crawfords' gilded doors, I couldn't help but stare at what money could buy. Paintings that probably cost more than my entire life, chandeliers that could blind the sun, and people who never looked at me unless they wanted something. "Don't scratch the piano again, Lila," Mrs. Crawford would hiss, her diamonds catching the light like they were mocking me. "Yes, ma'am." I'd keep my eyes down, even though inside I wanted to scream. The Crawfords were old money New York rich. Everything about them screamed privilege. Their accents, their posture, their perfect lives. Their son, Noah Crawford, was the only one who ever looked at me differently. Noah was the type of boy girls wrote diary pages about: messy brown hair, blue eyes that looked like trouble, and a smile that could disarm a room. But what caught me wasn't his face. It was how he treated people. He'd say thank you when I brought him coffee. He'd help me carry boxes when his mom wasn't watching. And once, when I cut my hand on a broken glass, he wrapped it with his handkerchief and said, "You shouldn't have to bleed for people who don't even see you, Lila." Those words stuck. Over time, stolen glances turned into whispered conversations, then into something riskier: midnight talks in the garden, hidden away from the mansion lights. He'd tell me how he hated his parents' world, how fake it felt, how lonely it was to be surrounded by everything but love. I understood that too well. He used to joke, "If I ever run away, you're coming with me." I'd laugh thinking he was teasing, but the way his eyes lingered on mine made me wonder if he meant it. Then came the night everything changed. It was the Crawfords' annual summer gala, a parade of designer gowns and champagne smiles. I was assigned to help serve drinks. The music was loud, but I still heard the whispers. "That maid's been getting too close to Noah. She's forgetting her place." When Noah found me near the terrace, his tie undone and his expression serious, I knew something was wrong. "Lila, meet me at the garden after midnight," he whispered. "Please." The way he said please made my heart stumble. So I did. The garden was quiet except for the fountain's trickle and the distant echo of laughter. He was waiting, holding an envelope. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said. "To California. I can't stay here anymore. Come with me." I froze. "Noah, your parents will—" "I don't care." He stepped closer. "We'll figure it out. You deserve better than being their maid. I'll take care of you." His words felt like oxygen after drowning too long. I wanted to say yes, to run, to believe love could rewrite fate. But before I could answer, headlights flashed across the garden. Her mother's voice sliced through the night. "Noah Crawford, what do you think you're doing?" The next morning, I was fired. No warning, no pay. Just a short letter from the Crawfords' lawyer and a threat: "If you ever contact Noah again, you'll regret it." I didn't see him again. For weeks, I replayed that night, every word, every look, wondering if I'd imagined it all. But the ache in my chest was real. So was the letter that arrived months later. Unsigned, but I knew his handwriting. "I'll find you, Lila. Wait for me." I waited. A year passed, then 2. Nothing. Life moved on without asking if I was ready. I found a job at a local bookstore, studied business at night through scholarships, and promised myself one thing: I'd never let anyone make me feel small again. Pain became fuel. Every rejection, every sneer, every door slammed in my face just made me sharper. By 23, I'd saved enough to move to New York City. That's where fate played its cruelest trick. The Crawfords' empire, Crawford Enterprises, was in trouble. I read about it in the paper while drinking my $1.50 coffee. Their stock had plummeted after a scandal involving embezzlement. The perfect family wasn't so perfect anymore. For a second, I felt bad. Then I remembered how they had thrown me out like garbage.
But karma wasn't finished. A week later, I landed a job at a small but fast-rising investment firm, Falcon Capital. My boss, Aiden West, was the kind of man Wall Street whispered about. Young, ruthless, brilliant. He noticed how I handled clients, how I saw patterns others missed. Within 2 years, I wasn't just an assistant anymore. I was the one people came to for decisions. Aiden once said, "You've got instincts most people spend a lifetime learning." What I didn't tell him was that survival had trained me better than any MBA ever could. Then one morning, he dropped a file on my desk. "We're acquiring a majority stake in Crawford Enterprises. I want you to lead the due diligence." My heartbeat stopped. Crawford. I opened the file, and there it was. Their logo, their signatures, their world on paper. My world. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the city skyline, feeling a strange mix of adrenaline and déjà vu. The Crawfords had built their empire on arrogance. Now it was collapsing, and I was being handed the match. Still, I couldn't stop thinking of Noah. Where was he? Was he still alive, still fighting his parents' control? Or had he become one of them? Aiden noticed my hesitation. "You good, Lila?" "Yeah," I lied. He smirked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Maybe I had. The next week was a blur of meetings, audits, and signatures. I learned every dark secret buried in Crawford Enterprises. Offshore accounts, fake charities, political payoffs. The more I uncovered, the more it felt personal. Until one day, during a board meeting at their Manhattan office, a familiar voice said, "Excuse me? You're sitting in my father's chair." I turned, and time froze. Noah Crawford stood in the doorway. He was older now, sharper, his boyish charm replaced by something colder. A tailored suit hugged his frame. His gaze was unreadable. But those same storm-blue eyes met mine and widened in shock. "Lila!" Everyone turned to look at me. For a heartbeat, the room felt too small, the air too thin. I straightened my blazer. "Good to see you again, Mr. Crawford." A flicker of something, pain, disbelief, maybe even pride, crossed his face. His mother, seated beside the CFO, stiffened. "You know this woman?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Yes, I do." The silence was louder than thunder.
Noah's eyes locked on mine as if the years between us had vanished. Except they hadn't. Those years had changed me, carved steel where softness used to live. He looked away first. "We'll start the meeting." His voice, steady, deeper now, sent a strange ache through my chest. The same voice that once whispered promises under starlight now carried authority that made rooms fall silent. I sat across from him while the lawyers droned on about assets and liabilities. Mrs. Crawford kept glancing at me like I was a bug she couldn't squash in public. Every time she spoke, it was with that same brittle elegance I remembered, the kind that cut deeper than knives. "Falcon Capital's proposal is ambitious, but we're not desperate." Aiden, sitting beside me, smiled coolly. "You will be if you don't accept it. My associate, Miss Grant, will walk you through the numbers." I clicked the remote, and the screen filled with charts, projections, and facts sharp enough to draw blood. As you can see, Crawford Enterprises is 6 months away from insolvency. You need us more than we need you. The words tasted like justice. Mrs. Crawford's face tightened. "And you're certain of these figures, Ms. Grant, was it?" "Yes, ma'am, I'm certain." Noah said nothing, but his gaze flickered between me and the screen, reading every line like it carried a secret. After the meeting, while the rest of the board filed out, he lingered. When the door clicked shut, the silence was electric. "You changed," he said finally. "So did I." His lips quirked into a humorless smile. Guess we both had to. I crossed my arms. I didn't have a choice. He took a slow breath. "I looked for you, for years. My parents lied," I cut in. "Manipulated you? Yeah, I figured." "Lila, don't." My voice cracked, but I steadied it. "You let them fire me like I was nothing." His jaw tightened. I was sent to London the next morning. No phone, no cards, no freedom.
They said you'd taken a payout and left. I laughed bitterly. A payout? I barely had bus fare. He stepped closer. If I'd known, you didn't, and that's what matters. For a beat hurt, we just stared. Me, fueled by anger. Him, haunted by guilt. Finally, he said, "What are you doing here, really?" "Doing my job. Acquiring your family's empire." His eyes widened. "You want revenge. I want control." He studied me like he was trying to solve a riddle. "You'll never be happy if all you want is power, Lila." Then it's a good thing I stopped believing happiness was for people like me. I turned to leave, but his voice bellowed softly, "You're still the same girl who loved the garden." I didn't look back. She's dead. That night, the city buzzed below my penthouse windows, 1,000 lights flickering like stars trying to outshine the dark. I poured myself a glass of wine and stared at my reflection. "You did it," I whispered. "You're on top." So why did it feel hollow? Because behind every win was a wound that never healed. My phone buzzed. A message from Aiden. "Good work today. They'll cave soon. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate?" I typed, "Sure," and hit send. But my thoughts weren't on him. They were on Noah. How dare he act like he'd suffered too? He was still a Crawford, living in luxury, while I'd fought tooth and nail to build myself from ashes. And yet, the way he'd looked at me, the way his voice had softened on my name. No, I shook the thought away. Feelings were distractions. The next day, the Crawfords hosted a negotiation dinner. A marble ballroom, soft jazz, chandeliers. The irony wasn't lost on me. Years ago, I'd served drinks here. Now I was the one holding the pen that could save or sink them. Mrs. Crawford greeted me with a frozen smile. "Ms. Grant, how lovely you could join us." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied sweetly. Noah appeared beside her, his expression unreadable. Aiden leaned close to me as we sat. "They'll sign tonight. Don't let sentiment get in the way." "Sentiment?" I whispered. "I don't have any left." The dinner unfolded like a chess match. Every compliment was a disguise, every toast a trap. I parried each remark with calm precision until Mrs. Crawford finally snapped. "I suppose you think you've won," she said, her voice sharp. "But power changes people, and when it's gone, they realize they're still the same nobody." I smiled. "Funny, you're saying that like you'd know." Her knife clinked against the plate. Noah's hand closed around hers, firm but quiet. "Mother." She pulled back, eyes blazing. "You're defending her? After everything she's done to us?" "Everything she's done?" he repeated softly. "You ruined her life." The room went still. I wanted to speak, but the shock in Mrs. Crawford's face was too delicious to interrupt. Noah pushed his chair back. "This dinner's over." He left, and for a second I felt the old ache again, the pull between love and vengeance. Aiden touched my shoulder. "Don't let him get to you." "I won't," I said, though my heartbeat betrayed me. Days later, the deal closed. Falcon Capital officially owned Crawford Enterprises. The press called it the takeover of the decade. Reporters hounded us outside the building. Flashbulbs popped, microphones thrust forward. I kept my chin high and smiled for the cameras. "Ms. Grant, how does it feel to acquire the Crawfords?" "It feels," I said, "like hard work pays off." The next morning, my name was everywhere. Leela Grant, the woman who conquered New York's elite. But fame brought ghosts. One evening, as I left the office, I found Noah waiting for me by my car. "We need to talk." I hesitated. "I don't owe you anything." "You don't," he admitted, "but I owe you the truth." Against my better judgment, I nodded. We ended up walking through Central Park, the city noise fading into the rustle of leaves. He told me everything, how his father's death had left him under his mother's control, how she'd lied about me, how he'd searched after college but couldn't trace where I'd gone. "I built this company back up," he said, "tried to fix the mess they made. And now you've taken it. Maybe that's justice." I stopped walking. "You think this was easy? Watching them burn didn't heal me, Noah. It just reminded me how much they took." He looked at me with that same softness I'd once trusted. "Then stop letting them take more." Something inside me cracked a little. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the girl I know wouldn't want to become what she hated." I looked away. "She doesn't exist." He smiled sadly. "Maybe not. but the woman standing here could choose what comes next. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words kept echoing. Revenge had been my North Star for so long that I didn't know how to live without it. Yet part of me wondered, was reclaiming power the same as healing? The next morning, Aiden barged into my office. We're restructuring the Crawfords, selling off divisions, cutting staff. Already? He said, "It's business, don't go soft." I stared at the reports. Hundreds of employees, people who had done nothing wrong, would lose their jobs. Was I really any different than the Crawfords if I let them happen? I closed the folder. Delay the layoffs. Aiden frowned. That's not your call. It is now. He studied me for a long second, then smirked. Maybe power's finally getting to you too, Grant. When he left, I sank into my chair. Maybe he was right. Maybe power does change people, but maybe it could also change them back. Later that week, I walked into the Crawford mansion, now technically my property, for the first time since I'd been fired. The house smelled the same: roses, polish, and old secrets. Mrs. Crawford was in the foyer, her pearls trembling slightly when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" "Checking on my investment." Her jaw set. "You'll regret this." "I already regretted trusting you once. Never again." She turned away, but not before I saw the fear flicker across her face. Upstairs, in the same hallway where Noah and I had once whispered dreams, I paused at a window overlooking the garden. The fountain still sparkled under the sun. Memories rose. His laughter, our promises, the pain. I exhaled slowly. This is where it began. And maybe where something new could start. A few weeks later, Noah called, "Meet me at the rooftop. One last time." The rooftop of Crawford Tower shimmered with city lights. When I arrived, he was leaning against the railing, wind tugging at his hair. "Why here?" I asked. "Because it's where I first realized the view means nothing if you have no one to share it with." I folded my arms. "You still think this is about us?" "No," he said softly. "It's about you, about what you'll do now that you've won." I stared at the skyline. Winning feels emptier than I thought. Maybe because you weren't fighting them. You were fighting yourself. Silence stretched. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a folded paper, yellowed with age. "I never stopped carrying it," he said. I opened it. It was the note he'd written years ago. "I'll find you, Lila. Wait for me." My breath caught. "You kept it?" "Always." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city hummed below, alive and uncaring. Finally, I whispered, "Maybe we both had to break to understand what love really costs." He reached for my hand, hesitant. "Then maybe it's time we stop paying for their mistakes." I didn't know if forgiveness was possible, but for the first time in years, I wanted to try. That night, as I walked home, the air felt lighter. I wasn't the maid anymore, or the broken girl with revenge in her veins. I was Lila Grant, a woman who had survived, fought, and finally started to choose herself. And this was only the beginning.
The night I got that letter, something inside me snapped, but not the way they expected. They thought I'd pack my bag, vanish, go back to being invisible. Instead, I started over. I found work in a small downtown cafe where no one cared who I'd once cleaned for. Between shifts, I studied bookkeeping, online business law, anything that could get me out of survival mode. Every coffee I poured became another brick in a wall I was building, not to keep people out, but to climb higher. 2 years passed. By then, the Sterling name was everywhere, on the news, in lawsuits, in whispers about missing funds. Rumor had it their empire was cracking, and every time I saw their logo flash on a TV screen, I felt the ghost of marble floors under my shoes and reminded myself I was done being small. Then one afternoon, a man in a navy suit walked into the cafe. "Lila Carter?" I looked up from the register. "Who's asking?" "Thomas Reed. I represent a potential investor. He'd like to meet you." I almost laughed. "I'm a barista. Tell your investor to try Wall Street." He smiled faintly. "He's quite familiar with it. He read your research blog, the one about rebuilding ethical corporations. He thinks you could help him restructure one." I blinked. My what? The blog I'd started at midnight out of pure frustration, writing about how companies could treat workers better. It had been anonymous. "Who is he?" I asked. Reed slid a card across the counter. "Sterling Industries Transition Board Meeting." My pulse stopped for a beat. "I'm not going," I said. "Then you'll never know what he wanted to tell you." 2 days later, I stood outside the same glass tower that had once been off limits to me. My reflection in the lobby door looked different now. Hairpinned, blazer sharp, confidence stitched into every seam. Inside, executives whispered when I walked past. The receptionist hesitated before saying, "They're expecting you, Miss Carter." The boardroom doors opened. And there he was, Noah. Older, sharper, but still unmistakably him. His tie was loosened, his expression unreadable. "Hi, Lila." The sound of my name in his voice hit, like a memory and a wound at once. "I thought you were gone," he smiled sadly. "My family sent me overseas after that night, said I needed space. Really, they wanted me out of the way." My throat tightened. "And now?" He said, "Now I'm back to fix what they broke." He gestured to the empty chairs. "I need someone who knows the truth, someone they underestimated, someone like you." I should have walked out. Instead, I sat down. For weeks, we worked side by side rebuilding the company's shattered image. We met with employees, audited finances, uncovered everything Vivian and Richard had hidden. Every discovery felt like peeling another lie off the walls. But working with Noah was dangerous in a different way. Late nights in the conference room turned into quiet jokes. He'd bring me coffee exactly how I liked it. When stress hit, he'd catch my eye and mouth, "We've got this." One night, after hours of spreadsheets, I closed my laptop and said, "Why me, Noah? You could have hired anyone." He leaned back in his chair, "Because I trust you." I almost laughed. "You didn't before." He said, "I was a coward before." His gaze softened. "You were right about everything." I wanted to believe him. Part of me already did. The turning point came the day the board discovered a hidden account under Vivian's name, millions siphoned from charity funds. She'd framed Noah as the leak to save herself. Noah slammed the folder shut. "She's going to destroy me to stay out of prison." I met his eyes. "Then we don't let her." That night, I called in favors from journalists I'd served coffee to for years. We built a trail of documents, timestamps, transfers. I wasn't just cleaning floors anymore. I was cleaning history. When the story broke, it exploded. Headlines screamed, "Sterling matriarch under investigation." The next morning, Vivian walked into the office in sunglasses and fury. "You think you've won, little maid?" I stood my ground. "No, I think I finally quit." Her lips thinned. "You'll never belong here. Maybe not in your version of here, but in mine? I built it." She left, and the echo of her heels sounded like surrender. After the scandal, Richard stepped down. The org offered temporary leadership to Noah, and he offered it to me. "Chief Operations Officer," he said, sliding the folder toward me. I stared. "You're serious?" He said, "As serious as the girl who taught me what integrity looks like." For a second, all the marble floors and sleepless nights flashed back at once. I took the pen. "Then let's rebuild it right." The weeks that followed felt surreal. Press interviews, investor calls, strategy sessions. The name Lila Carter started trending online, from maid to executive. But the higher I climbed, the more I realized power wasn't the victory. It was the chance to choose who I'd be with it. Noah found me one night on the rooftop terrace, city lights glimmering below. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it." He shook his head. "No, you did. I just followed your lead." Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, I whispered, "You once told me I made you feel real." He smiled faintly. "You still do." The distance between us vanished, not with fire, but with peace. When he kissed me, it wasn't a question this time. It was an answer. The first time I walked back into the Crawford estate after 3 years, I wasn't carrying a tray. I was carrying power. The same marble floors that used to echo my hurried footsteps now glistened beneath my heels. My company's logo, Haven Lux Developments, was etched on the construction banners surrounding the mansion. They were renovating under my contract, and they didn't even know.
I'd built my fortune from scratch. Real estate flips, interior design, viral social media campaigns. What started as a passion for restoring old houses turned into a multi-million-dollar empire. Every night, I'd worked through blisters and exhaustion, picturing their sneers, their laughter, the way they made me invisible. That image kept me awake until I could finally afford to never be invisible again. Now, I was back, not as Leela the maid, but as Leela Hart, CEO. When the butler opened the door, confusion flickered in his eyes. "Ma'am, can I help you?" "Tell Mr. Crawford the project manager is here," I said smoothly. Moments later, footsteps thundered down the hall. Mrs. Crawford appeared, draped in silk, her pearls trembling as she froze mid-stride. "You," she whispered. I smiled, all warmth and poison. "Me." Her husband's voice boomed from behind her. "Lila Hart? As in the Haven Lux owner?" Surprised, I tilted my head. "You hired my firm for your renovations. I didn't realize you were the clients until this morning." Lie. I'd known all along. I had planned this. Their son, Noah Crawford, appeared next. Time hadn't been kind to him. Or maybe it had. He looked rawer, humbler. The careless golden boy I'd once loved now had a quiet ache in his eyes. "Leela," he said softly, like he was afraid I'd vanish if he spoke too loud. I didn't vanish. I smiled, ice sharp. "Mr. Crawford." The next few weeks were chaos, a kind of revenge disguised as professionalism. I directed crews around the mansion, giving crisp orders while Mrs. Crawford tried to act superior. But her mask cracked every time she remembered who was paying for the upgrades. Noah lingered. Every meeting, every late-night walkthrough, he found reasons to stay near. "Do you hate me?" he asked one evening when we were alone in the ballroom. "I don't waste hate on the past," I replied. "That's not an answer." "No, it's not," I said, walking away. The truth? I didn't know how I felt. Anger had been my armor for so long that forgiveness felt like betrayal to myself. Still, sometimes I caught myself remembering the boy who once sneaked me books when his mother forbade me from the library. The boy foretold me I was worth more than this house. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man carrying guilt heavy enough to drown in. Weeks turned into months. The Crawfords' finances unraveled. Bad investments, lawsuits, debts. They were bleeding money, and my company was the only thing keeping their estate afloat. Every invoice they signed was another thread tying them to me. And yet, watching them crumble didn't feel as satisfying as I had imagined. Revenge wasn't as loud as I thought it would be. It was quiet, lonely, echoing. One night, Noah found me on the terrace, the city lights flickering beyond the trees. "Why did you really come back, Leela?" I looked at him, searching for the right lie, but my voice betrayed me. "Because I wanted them to feel small, like I used to feel." He stepped closer, and out, and now I just feel tired. He reached out, fingertips brushing mine. I pulled away. "You can't fix what your family broke." "Maybe not, but I can start by saying I'm sorry. I should have fought harder for you." "You didn't fight at all," I said, tears stinging my eyes. The next morning, the Crawfords called an emergency meeting. Bankruptcy loomed. They begged me to buy out their shares in the estate business. I did, on one condition. The mansion came with it. When the papers were signed, Mrs. Crawford's eyes glistened with fury. "You think you've won, don't you?" "No," I said quietly. "Winning would mean becoming like you." Later that night, I walked through the empty halls, my heels echoing. Every portrait on the walls stared down at me like ghosts. I wasn't that scared girl anymore, but her shadow still lived here. That's when Noah appeared again, this time without pretense. "So what happens now?" I turned to face him. "Now I own everything your family once used to make me feel worthless." "And you're still not happy?" "No," I admitted, "because happiness was never part of the plan." He stepped closer, eyes sincere. "Then change the plan." Weeks passed. Renovations finished. The Crawfords moved out, swallowed by scandal. I kept the mansion, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Noah stayed. He started working for Haven Lux, stubborn and genuine. People whispered that I only hired him out of pity, but they didn't know the truth. I hired him because he finally stopped running from his own name. One night, under the same chandelier where I'd once served champagne, I found myself staring at the reflection of my past. "You know," he said softly, "you rebuilt this place into something beautiful." I smirked. "I rebuild things. It's what I do." He hesitated. "Can we rebuild us?" I laughed, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in years. Us doesn't exist. "Maybe it could," he said, voice trembling. "Not the way it was, but something new." The air between us was electric. My pulse betrayed me. I wanted to believe him, to believe that maybe love could grow from ashes instead of pain. I stepped closer. "If you hurt me again, there won't be a second chance." He nodded. "Then I won't hurt you." And somehow, I believed him. Months later, the mansion reopened as the Haven Estate, a luxury venue that employed girls from shelters and foster homes, giving them chances I never had. The press called me the maid who owned the mansion. I didn't correct them. The title fit. At the opening gala, cameras flashed, reporters swarmed, and Noah stood beside me, not as a Crawford, but as a man who learned to stand in the light without his family's shadow. When a reporter asked if I'd forgiven them, I smiled into the microphone. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom, and I'm finally free. That night, as the last guests left, I wandered into the ballroom again. The chandeliers shimmered, music hummed faintly through the walls, and Noah's hand found mine. "You know, you rebuilt this place into something beautiful," he whispered. I smirked. "I rebuild things. It's what I do." I power into peace. Outside, the mansion glowed like a beacon against the night. Once, I was the maid who cleaned other people's dreams. Now, I lived mine. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone anymore.
If you enjoyed watching this story, we would truly appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and keeps us motivated to create more emotional and inspiring stories for you.